And we're back, live streaming from the Londonderry Fish and Game Club in beautiful Londonderry Litchfield. Are we in the Litchfield side or the Londonderry
We're
side?
in Londonderry.
We're in the Londonderry.
Yeah, the club property is in Londonderry, but the entrance is on a street in Litchfield.
Correct. So we are here.
Which I missed the first time around.
Which you missed the first time around. Yeah, now, I was looking at the map, and it used to be, the entrance used to be up farther up Albuquerque.
Yeah, it used to be on Morgan Road by Litchfield Sand and Gravel.
Yeah.
So you had an extremely tough trip coming in. If you'd have a four-wheel drive vehicle, that road was tough.
Yeah.
And that also curtailed our membership quite a bit. And once we put this new road in and built a H20 load-rated road that was compacted, and even though it's gravel, I mean,
it's a good road.
If you can drive a Prius in here, that expands your
It's
opportunities.
a nice road. I mean, as far as dirt roads go in New Hampshire, and if you've never been up here, there's lots of dirt roads.
And they're fun, and most of them you
most
can
of them
barrel
are
along.
dirt roads. You know, when I used to drive part-time for UPS, I'd be out in Mason, and you go mudding. You're four-wheeling in your package car because there's mud and dirt everywhere, and those roads get pitted. This is a nice road. It really is.
Are the UPS trucks four-wheel drive?
No.
Ah.
No, they're not.
So you'd be four-wheel drifting, not four-wheel driving.
I'd be using my four rear wheels to four-wheel through the mud. In a very tiny package car, by the way, because I worked on Saturdays, and so we didn't need big ones. I usually have anything bigger than what they call a 700, which is the medium-sized ones. They have ones that are called 1300s that are like buses. They're huge.
Right.
And they're for like parks and places where you just have tons of stuff, lots of businesses
Yeah.
that the government wants to close.
So to go back to where we were at before the squirrels attacked, and I've got a...
By the way, GrokTALK.com, please visit Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and now we're on Ustream. You'll be able to see this on Ustream, and it'll be there forever unless they close it down.
And I've got a squirrel story to follow, which I didn't post yet.
All right, squirrel away.
But getting back to where we were at, which was the growing tyranny of the progressive state with all of its good intentions, and the fact that Scott Brown voted for it, and that what we want out of our gubernatorial candidates is for one of them to say loud and clear, and Hemingway already has, so what we want is the other one to say loud and clear, so it's a real contest, that they will actually stand up for state rights and tell the federal government hell no on a whole bunch of things. You don't have the authority to do this. You do not have the police powers. Your armed agents aren't welcome in our state. And let's start telling the federal government to do its job and stop trying to do ours.
I don't think we're going to hear that. Not from the likes of the establishment candidates put forward.
Well, let us find out. But we want a senatorial candidate that's going to vote that stuff down, and congressional candidates, and we want a gubernatorial candidate that'll simply say hell no, like Rick Perry does.
Yeah, I always wonder about how these things, how they perceive these work. Do they, I think there's a general sentiment with the establishment that, we're all a bunch of sheeple, the unwashed, if you will. We're all a bunch of sheeple,
Peasants.
And we're sitting back, and we will take whatever they feed us. I think they really believe that. And the reason is like going back to my Havenstein-Brown problem post, I said there are three things that both Havenstein and Brown have a problem. They have a Republican problem, they have an activist problem, and they have a gun problem. It never fails. You're talking to a moderate when they pipe up and they say to you, I don't think guns are really an important issue for a lot of people. And my response always is, I'll bet you $50 million that it is.
Well, those of us who are interested in the gun issue understand that it is just a symptom versus the disease.
Right.
And I think a lot of people are starting to wake up to a lot of this because you see that restlessness and that angst. And once again, I'm seeing in the blogosphere and in the reports that I'm seeing, and I'm sure you guys are as well, that there is an anti-incumbent sentiment starting up again, that people are upset. I mean, all you have to do is look at the Cantor loss. And here's a guy who's out proclaiming we have to give amnesty, that it's the right thing to do. We can't just turn these kids away. And, you keep hearing this, and all the regular folks are going, wait a minute, a lot of these illegals are going to take the low-skilled, blue-collar jobs away from me, or the factory jobs from me.
Or from their kids.
Because
not every kid gets out of high school with honors and goes to college.
And you can't just turn away the immigrant kid because you'll get crap from the government.
Yeah.
But that's the problem. People are starting to wonder, just like they did in Britain, where they had the massive immigration. And finally it was, and I forget what party it was, and I just read it again, that said, well, we made a mistake. We did this mass immigration. What?
I'm pointing at the camera. The light's looking at me.
Oh, well, I didn't put it on, but
and the club's nearly as
all
old
right.
as
Hold
I am.
on. Let me switch it then.
Squirrels.
Put the hat up again. We are at the Londonderry Fish and Game, courtesy of Mr. Rick.
And he's,
Rockster Rick.
he's wearing a camouflage version.
I'm wearing
and,
a camel version.
And this
I
is
have
a long-established club, as it says on the back of the hat, which I'm very proud to wear because, like I said, it's nearly as old as I am by about 6 weeks.
Okay, I'm the only guy at the table that's not a member. That's because I'm way the heck up in the Lakes region.
He's
so.
way the heck up in the Lakes.
He's an honorary member. The rest of us are sponsoring him here today.
Yes. But anyways, as I was starting to say, they said we're bringing all these people in to fundamentally change the nature of the British citizen. And I look at that and
It
go,
worked.
why? Well, it has. But the question to be asked is, who the hell gave them the right to do that?
Why would you want to fundamentally change the nature of the British citizen? I can think of a few minor defects, mostly caused by the welfare state, but the British people have done very well for centuries.
I was going to say, aside from their menu, for the most part, right? Isn't that what you guys get picked on the most? It says you boil everything. I don't think that's true, but that's what they say.
Boiled beef and cabbage.
Yeah, what's wrong with that?
Yeah.
But
Maybe
look at-
not every day, but
But look what England gave us, the whole set of common law. What is commonly referred to as the Anglosphere, and yes, colonialism, they took over a lot of countries, claimed it for their own during the 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th centuries. I mean, that's what the great powers did at that time, whether you like it or not, whether you, like Obama and Obama's father, rail against it, and now he's taking retribution upon America for it. But there is this white guilt of Westerners over that, and it's like, well, we need to take ourselves down a bit. No, because you look at how much good the Anglosphere has done around the world, regardless of whether you're Australia, a former prison colony. You come here, it was a former corporatist colony in the beginning. You look at Singapore, which it's not even quote unquote white. I mean, you look at that, and some of the and Hong Kong, they were
Even India.
British, India,
and
British,
Malaysia to a point. Well, yeah. So the
Canada?
the Indians resented the colonial rule, but they embraced the language and the system. And the reason they embraced both is because the language is more common than any of their dialects for business across the nation, and the rule of law and the business methods. Even bureaucratic Victorian business methods have stood them in good stead as they have become an
they could have
economic
just
power.
dumped the caste system. They would have been all set.
well, they
they'll do
did
that
dump
eventually.
that, but back in the 40s, like
yeah,
a lot of,
but they didn't really.
but back in the 40s, like a lot of countries, including the Fabian socialists in Britain, very much went socialist. And there was a big effort here in this country that we've been fighting ever since. A big push for socialism here in the United States, which most people don't understand.
Well,
the
Gandhis and Nehru were all about socialism, and it wasn't until about 20 years ago that somebody had the courage to stand up and say, this doesn't work.
well, and
People
still
don't know what socialism is because as soon as you say socialism, you got somebody sitting back going, oh, okay, break out the tinfoil hats now, I mean, people really do not grasp what it means when a country moves towards socialism. Would you not agree? I mean,
I agree, and I think
so.
we're not moving towards socialism per se in a lot of cases. Although the Veterans Administration basically is a purely socialism entity within the United States government, where it owns all the facility, it owns the means of production. But I see in a lot of ways that we are bouncing between. Obama's trying to fundamentally change us by going to a midpoint between fascism, and I don't mean it in the screaming
No, it's
political
It's the
thing.
political.
But you look
not
at
the
you
Right,
look at the
yeah,
economics
before-
where
yeah.
you don't have to own. Mussolini realized you don't have to own the means of production to completely control it. You just have to surround that entity with so many laws and regulations that, in effect, sure, the owners own it, but I control it. And now you keep hearing me rail about the bureaucratic control.
It's a two-way bargain. The big existing corporations support government regulation because it keeps their upstart competitors out, and in some cases their foreign competitors out. The government supports it because they get to control the means of production. And in the end, it's all a very tight-knit knot. And it stifles the economy. And eventually it's doing it now.
It creates a two-class system.
Yeah, it goes downhill. The only parts of the economy that are doing well are those that do stuff that isn't regulated or can't be regulated, like the bleeding edge of high tech, where I work. Nobody's regulating what we do, and as a result, we're actually leaders in our field.
Somebody just wrote that down.
What's that?
One of our trackers just wrote that down. The bleeding edge of technology. It's not regulated. It will be by next week. Let's just make a note.
Yeah, notice I'm
What's
not
the
naming.
date?
I'm not
2014.
I'm not naming the company.
No.
In my headquarters, I'm well known as the gun nut, and the CEO occasionally calls me out in meetings just for fun. He's a friend of mine. But I wouldn't want to mix my personality with the corporation.
But it doesn't have to happen just at the federal level with the big companies as well. I put up a post this week about crony capitalism at the local level as well. And what happens in my local town can happen anywhere else, where a restaurant that I happen to go to, once it's open, it's seasonal in the Lakes region, wanted to bring in a vendor that was going to operate a donut cart. And the owner of the property spent thousands of dollars on this trailer, stainless steel, the whole bit, all to the code, on stone, had the built-in underground facilities like electric and all that other stuff. Got it all set up, opened up, and here comes the health code officer, shut them right down. And it was really because the farmer down the street had been using the same donut vendor, and the farmer's wife was upset that they wouldn't deliver donuts more often. So they fired the vendor. And then when this guy was going to use the same vendor, the farmer used his connection as the chair of one of the boards in town to so says the scuttlebutt, go do this. So you see that.
What if he said hell no and I'll see you in court and just kept on selling the donuts?
It's expensive.
It's expensive, and at that point the health code officer would have gotten the police to take the owner away. I mean, you're not going to have a gunfight right then and there over a donut. I'm sorry, there are other things that would be more important.
As much as you'd like to, Mike.
Yes.
No. I understand that. You're right. It's not worth.
Mike's our militant guy.
It's not worth taking to that point, without some other recourse. But my point is, hell no, and see you in court. And if you're saying they drag him away for not stopping selling donuts on his own property, I think which is already a retail establishment, I think that is an absolute travesty.
Well, that's why at the planning board meeting this past, that's a big boom.
Somebody hit some tannerite.
And that's why I spoke in support of this guy at the planning board. And basically, it was a case of, let's use Alinsky's rules for radicals against my town government. My really only question was, are there any rules that you have that would preclude him from opening that donut trailer? I cut right to the chase and said, give me the rule. I demanded, give me the rule that says you can shut him down for non-compliance, which is why he's here. And they couldn't. They had to give him the permission. And it is a case where if you have the right connections, regardless of the level of government, you can use that as a barrier to entry to your competitors. And I think it sucks. And that's why the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is so mad at the Tea Party type folks, because we're not pro-business, we're pro-free market. And there is a huge, huge difference between those two statements.
And I want to go around on that in just a moment. So talking about startups, and barriers to entry. The best barrier to entry is having something the other guy can't replicate or can't replicate in a hurry. And so I have worked, the last 3, maybe 4 companies I've worked at have had stuff that the Me Too guys couldn't catch up to, and we could make fun of the Me Too guys. And that's the way to do it. And you do that by having brilliant people that know how to work together. And it may take them a while to come up with the next idea, but once they've got it, and they're off and running, you can't catch them. And so, I've worked in ATM networking of all things. I've worked in web switching. I've worked in wireless, and I'm currently working in cloud-based storage. And the guys that produced our product after a false start in a different line, slightly different line of business, were able to come up with something that provides value that other vendors simply don't have. And so as a result, people are actually consulting with us about which direction the industry is going. That's a remarkable thing for a small company. And that's what I call value in a startup. And the reason I want to go down that road is because people keep saying, Scott Brown only signed on with a startup in Florida. The hell he did. That comes back to cui bono, just like Dodd-Frank. He signed on with a company that is a shapeshifter that keeps changing what it wants to be when it grows up in order to generate excitement. It doesn't produce product; it produces buzz. It is a penny stock shell corporation that does pump and dump, and he signed on for that. And he coulda, shoulda, woulda known that. He's a lawyer. There were legal papers out there indicating that the principals of this business had been sued for operating a pump and dump previously. There were all sorts of bad signs. There were further bad signs in October when the CEO of the armaments company that they were in the process of buying out of bankruptcy, which was the whole reason I think why Scott Brown signed on. Hey, look like a cool pro-gun guy because the company I signed on with is an arms manufacturer. The CEO of that company said, wait a minute, that order that you're touting in order to pump the stock, it never came in. There is no such thing. This $95 million order didn't exist.
Wow.
And it got to the point where the acquirers, this GDSI, this shell corporation, were violating so many of the agreements they'd made to buy this arms manufacturer that she was pushing back, realizing she was being bought by crooks. And they sued her in January of this year for basically obstructing the acquisition. And this on the same date that the first of Brown's stock vested. That was the other thing that was weird about the deal. When you join a startup, your stock typically vests over 4 years with nothing of it falling into your hands for the first year. And furthermore, if there's anything like an IPO, you can't sell any of your stock as an insider for at least 6 months. In Scott Brown's case, his stock vested starting 4 months after he signed with the company and fully vested in a year. Maybe that's because it's a volatile stock, because it's a scam, shell corporation, pump and dump. But boy, oh boy, none of these things look like a normal startup. People have taken me to task, and I've got some discus doodlings on that, saying it's just a startup. He's entitled to take a risk and get a reward. No. The risk was he got found out. The reward was saying he was associated with a arms manufacturer, and the secondary reward was he might have made $1.3 million, which looks pretty unlikely.
You know what this sounds like?
This sounds like
Hillary Clinton and the cattle futures with Tyson.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. He was basically given something that would have been a giveaway just for lending his good name to the corporation. And make no mistake, his, and I think formerly, good name was used by this corporation to pump their stock to pull in the suckers. And right now the NHGOP is using the formerly good name of Scott Brown to pump their stock to pull in the suckers to try and win the Senate race, and I think they've backed the wrong horse. But let me go one step further and connect the squirrels here. Scott Brown voted for Dodd-Frank. Dodd-Frank spawned the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, which is supposed to protect you against this sort of scam, but they can't because you can't possibly regulate everything. Wouldn't it be poetic justice if the CFPB shut down summarily with a cease and desist GDSI of Florida for being a financial risk to the public?
Well, that would be quite the circle to make, but that's okay.
Now, okay, rant off. All yours.
Well, what's the name of that operation where they're shutting down gun stores? That the Treasury
financial.
Yeah,
they're encouraging banks not to give loans.
Yeah, they put strip joints, escort services, payday loans, and guns shops, and Operation, and I can't remember.
They classify them as high-risk clients, which means that the assets of the bank or credit card company that's dealing with them then become thinner, and they put themselves at risk or put themselves in a high-risk category, which then means the regulators are going to scrutinize them more closely. So the banks say, I don't want the regulators breathing down my neck. I'm going to drop the gun store.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that came out in the last couple of weeks, and Rick, you may know a little bit more about this, was Shooters Outpost made national news where their Massachusetts insurance company decided we're not going to insure you anymore. So is this the same thing?
Starting in September, yeah.
Yeah. Is this the same thing that we're seeing on the insurance side as it is on the financial side? Is it squeezing? I mean, you look at the Redskins. Oh, you know that Obama was behind the Patent and Trademark Office for yanking the trademark away from the Washington
Somebody
Redskins.
in the administration was, yeah.
Yeah, and by the way, that wasn't a first. I forget under which former administration. Might have been Clinton's, but it could have been one of the Bushes.
Don't worry, though.
Well,
Obama did learn about it when he saw it on the news.
Yeah,
This is a trend that keeps going on. Macmillan Group International, as far back as 2012, they told Macmillan Group, which is a gun company, the Bank of America told them they no longer wanted their business. And BitPay, a Bitcoin processor, refused to do business with Mike Cargill, who owns Central Texas Gun Works. The list just goes on. I mean, Chase Bank was sending out letters to hundreds of porn stars notifying them that their accounts would be terminated.
That's a war on women right there.
Electronic Transactions Associations, yeah, it is. It's a war on women, yeah. They also, Operation Choke Point, that's what
Actually,
it's
I'm
called.
sorry.
Operation Choke
that
Point.
violates the First Amendment, by the way. Because what they do is supposed to be free speech, right? I'm sorry, go ahead.
They target ETA, which is Electronic Transactions Association. They targeted ammunition sales as well. So this is an ongoing effort by this administration and Eric Holder to shut down all commerce to all things which they deem as immoral or corrupt based on their own set of rules and paradigms.
So it's like a theocracy.
Yeah. Well, it's worse. Imposed morality from the central government is
central government with no morality to begin with.
Is tyranny. Morality should be a local thing, a peer pressure thing, something that we do from our deep convictions.
Well, it does bring up the primary question we were talking about tangentially earlier, is that why should the government be telling us what is good and what is bad, especially from these lefties who have said there has to be complete separation of church and state, although they are implementing their own version of secular humanism, which to me is a form of religion to begin with. But it goes against the progressive mantra. Although I do wonder about them shutting down the porn industry, because so much of the left is all about you can have as much sex as you want with anybody that you want. We'll make sure that you don't get pregnant. We'll take care of your STDs, and if you need an abortion, we'll even take you out of junior high school to go get it.
Yeah, and if you have a child, we'll help pay for it.
Yeah, and we'll make sure your parents never know about it.
Yeah,
I mean,
until it's too late.
Until it's
How
too
do you hide that from mommy and daddy?
Yeah, I mean, you look at this stuff.
Yeah, and by the way, not only Hillary Clinton in her legal defense, but the entire socialist apparatus protects rapists. They protect situations of statutory rape, because more often than not, or at least often enough to be remarkable, when Planned Parenthood performs an abortion on a minor without informing the parents, the sponsor who brings them there is in fact the rapist. They're not called that at the time. It's the boyfriend who conveniently happens to be old enough to be had up for statutory rape if anybody found out. So, basically, Planned Parenthood is complicit in covering up the crime and destroying the evidence of it.
And we've seen that with Live Action, which is sort of analogous to Project Veritas. Lila Rose, who has gone in and done the same kind of investigative videos that James O'Keefe does. James must have gotten lost someplace.
Yeah, we still have an hour. I mean, we're coming up on the end of the second segment, but he's not here yet.
But both of them are going in.
We can do a micro interview down at the range.
Yeah. We got plenty of SD cards for the cameras, so not a problem. But you look at this and you go, here's where we can fight back with a disruptive technology called the internet. And let's swing all the way back to what we started about, which was NHGOP Chair Jennifer Horn saying, you will be unified in voting for the nominee. If it wasn't for the internet and Facebook and Twitter and blog sites and alternative media, do you think that most of the Republicans would understand there's alternatives to doing this, that the discussions can be had at the speed of the internet that before you couldn't have? So you have that diversity of thought. Diversity, there's that word the left loves to hate because we keep using it in ways that they don't approve of. But, you look at that and you go, to prove Mike's point about Planned Parenthood, we'd never know what they're doing because they're always sidestepping the question. Or if it's even brought up, like they did with Lila Rose and James O'Keefe, they sidestepped the question, and that malfeasance would never have been discovered.
You would only know what the media on TV shared. You would only know what teachers in your classrooms told you, and you would only know what your parents know, which would be what you know, which is what it used to be like. The breadth of media expression was very limited, and the left traditionally controls media. So you're absolutely right. Without the internet, without talk radio as we know it now, you wouldn't. I mean, these people would just be going, "Oh, Scott Brown, okay. Oh, Unity, yeah. Oh, all right. Pick a topic that the media has hidden. There's lots of them. All the scandals, all that stuff. We wouldn't know any of it.
But we're just the rabble-rousers.
That's us, yeah.
That's it.
Fire-breathing, hard-charging, gun-toting, outspoken, rabble-rousing, freedom-loving bloggers. That's us.
That's true. That is true. And, freedom really does mean what we expect it to mean, which means we get to decide, we get to act out the way that we want to. And, this Operation Choke Point is just another way of tyranny by incremental 1,000 cuts of paper.
Yeah, everywhere we turn, they are taking away our freedoms. Our freedoms are of travel, of expression, of religion, to simply do business as we deem fit, to choose our healthcare provider. Every bit of it they're taking away. And when they can control how you earn your living, how you maintain your health, and ultimately how you get your food, I'm convinced that's coming. You effectively are completely beholden to the government.
All right, we're coming to the end of the second segment of the program. This is GrokTALK. I'm Steve McDonald here with Mike Rogers, Skip Murphy, and Rick Olson, president of the Londonderry Fishing Game Club, which is sponsoring us today. And we'll be back in about 3 minutes. Kill it.
Grok TV.